Hey Mixers, welcome back to another NFL video. We've already covered all the NFC divisions and we just have the AFC West left after today. Today we're covering the AFC South. We're going to go through the schedules, the win totals, see if there's any division bets that we can be making before the season starts. And we're going to answer the question, are those Texans going to be challenged for that division this year? I think they are. So I do think they could still win it, but I do think that they are going to be challenged a little bit. So let's jump into it, guys. All right, guys, so I do have CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence on the thumbnail here, and I have the question, will CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence go the distance this year in the AFC South? So we're going to start with the Texans because they obviously won the division last year. So they went 10-7. They were the division champions. They swept the Colts and the Jaguars, and then they traded with the Titans. All of their non-division losses, except for one, were to playoff teams. So they played really well, especially on defense. Their offensive line definitely needs some work, and they didn't do much to address it in the offseason. They also lost, obviously, a great wide receiver in Tank Dell, but they did draft to replace him, at least temporarily, in Jaden Higgins. And I think he's going to be great this year. He's been moving up the draft board, so I think other people are kind of in agreement. So they are facing 7 playoff teams from 2024. So I would say kind of a middle-of-the-road toughness schedule for a division champion. And they're a good team in a bad division. I think they're pretty well balanced with, a good quarterback, a good running back, a good wide receiver number 1, and a great defense. So they're pretty well balanced as long as they can get that ball out and CJ Stroud doesn't take as many sacks as he normally does. I think that they could win this division again this year. Now, before we jump into the schedule and you start grumbling about where exactly I put the wins and losses, if you've seen my other videos, you know that we're not trying to find the exact outcomes of every single matchup right now. We're just trying to find an average, like a median win total, to see if there's any edge on that Vegas line so that we can make any bets here. So we can do that week to week, pick those exact matchups as the season progresses. So last year they won 5 division games. This year, I'm going to bring that down to 4. I do think that there is a little bit more talent in the division with the Jaguars. And, the Colts are kind of always a wild card. I mean, obviously, we all saw how horrible they played. But just 2 years ago, they were going to go to the playoffs, basically. They were in it with the Texans to go to the playoffs, and it came down to one final play. So they can always surprise us as well. So let's give them those 4 division wins and 2 losses. And then let's tackle those 7 playoff teams next. So if you include the 49ers, who probably will be a playoff team this year, in my opinion, that brings the total to 8. Last season, the Texans had 3 losses against playoff teams and only 1 win. So if we use a similar split here, that would mean 6 losses and 2 wins. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and give them 5 and 3. So 5 losses, 3 wins. There's only 3 teams left on the schedule, and they're not very good teams. So especially when they go up against it like a playoff level defense like what the Texans have. So I'm going to give them all 3 of those wins there. I think that's fair, especially given the fact that we didn't give them the benefit of the doubt as much on those playoff team splits. So this puts the Texans at 10 wins. The Vegas line is 9.5. So I do think that there is a little bit of value here. I think the Texans could win or lose another game. And, obviously things can always fall apart for any team, but I don't see them losing more than like 2 extra games here at the very most. So since our number came out above the Vegas line and there's plus money on it, I probably will bet the Texans over 9.5 wins here. All right, going to the Jaguars. I do think that the Jaguars are going to make a playoff push this year. Obviously, that will all depend on the health of Trevor Lawrence and his arm, and obviously the rest of the team. Everything's going to be taken into consideration, but I could see this becoming like a Bengals offense. So we know Trevor Lawrence has the arm. We know Trevor Lawrence has the capabilities of being the league passing leader, just from like a slinging the ball standpoint. But does he have the receivers to catch the ball? Well, now he has Brian Thomas Jr., who obviously had an amazing rookie season last year, and Travis Hunter on the other side. So I do think there is some opportunities here. I do see a lot of parallels between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase with T. Higgins. Now, I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars are going to play as well as the Bengals have played in recent seasons, but I think it is within their range of outcomes, especially in a weak division. I think that that they could potentially win quite a few games this year. So they only had one win outside of the division last year. And so that's pretty bad, obviously. They did add QB whisperer Liam Cohen as a coach this year. They also added Travis Hunter. They also made additions to their O-line. They have, I think, 3 great running backs. I know not everyone likes ETN, and obviously he had a horrible season last year. He was on my roster, so trust me, I feel your pain. He was rostered in one of my most important leagues. So I definitely feel the pain on that one, but I do think that they have all the pieces. I think that their tight end, Bretton Strange, it showed a lot of promise last year as well. I think this could be the most improved team in the NFL. I think Trevor Lawrence easily could win comeback player of the year. So I think, in fact, I need to go check those odds because I think that's a bet I'll probably be placing on Trevor Lawrence. I think Tyreek Hill and Tua obviously could win that award as well. So since Jacksonville is going to be competitive this year, and they were able to remain somewhat competitive in the division last year, I'm going to give them 3 wins in the division. The Jaguars had 0 wins against playoff teams last year, and they're facing 5 playoff teams from 2024, including the Texans, plus the Bengals and the 49ers, who obviously could be playoff teams any given year. So of those 6 teams, I think the best we can project them for right now is 2 wins, 4 losses. And then the rest of the teams on the schedule are kind of bad to mid teams, and they're kind of in the same range as the Jaguars. So this is where I think the Jaguars could go on a huge run, win all of these games potentially, and have an outstanding season and maybe take that division. But just to be on the safe side for the purposes of the win total, we're going to give them 3 wins here and 2 losses. So this puts the Jaguars at a win total of 8, but I'm seeing a range of like 7 to 9, maybe even 10. So there's no clear value on either side of this 7.5 line, is the way that the juice is laid. And so I am going to stay away from this. But if I do see any juice on this eventually, I'll like plus money to the over, or like plus money for a lot of plus money for over 8.5, maybe like plus 250. I'll probably be betting this because I do think the Jaguars are in for an incredible season. So let's go into the Colts. They went 8-9 last year, so their season looked okay on paper. But if you watched the games, it was not okay, all right? They were a disaster. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, their starting quarterback, got benched. We have serious concerns if he's even going to ever play another snap for the Colts again. He might start the year, he might not. So they brought in Daniel Jones, and we'll just see who ends up winning that job. They only had 1 win against playoff teams that they played last year. So they're facing 6 playoff teams this year. So their schedule did get slightly easier. I'm going to give them 3 division wins because that's what they were able to get last year. So we'll just keep them the same there. And then the 5 playoff teams that are left on their schedule, plus the Falcons and the 49ers, who I think might be making playoff pushes. Out of those, since they only beat the 1 playoff team last year, I'm going to give them 1 win and 4 losses against these teams, and then split the Falcons 50-50. And then there's 4 bad to mid teams left on the schedule, so we'll just split these 50-50 as well. This leaves the Colts at a 7 win total. The Vegas line's 7.5. I'm less optimistic about the Colts than maybe some other people are. I think that if they have a quarterback change middle of the year, that also could cause some issues with their team. I do think they have some really good players, and I would love to see them be able to play well. But I think that we'll know week 1 against the Dolphins how they play. If they can't win that game, then this is going to be a really rough year for the Colts. So I would actually lean under this 7.5 line, but we're not getting plus money for that. So I'm just going to wait and see if these lines move at all. For the Titans, they had a miserable year last year. They went 3-14. Obviously, they got the first pick in the draft because of that. And I was a huge fan of Cam Ward in college, and I wish I could show you the text to prove it. I assumed he was going to go first overall out of the quarterbacks really early on. He was clearly just the best player in college, in my opinion, of those who were entering the draft. So I'm a big fan of him, but I still think that it's going to be really tough to climb this division ladder. And I don't think that they have all the pieces around him that they need to be successful. So I know others don't agree with me about that. I do think that they'll be a little bit better than last year, probably have more than 3 wins. So they only had the 1 division win. But we're trying to find a ceiling for this team because they were bottom of the barrel last year. So I'm actually just going to give them 3 wins in the division. And then of the 4 playoff teams on the schedule, I'm going to give them 3 losses and 1 win especially because these playoff teams that they're facing are all defensively minded teams except for the Rams. So I think they're going to lose a lot of those games. And then of the teams that are left, the 49ers are the only one that I think might be making a playoff push. Maybe the Patriots, just because they have such an easy schedule this year. So I'm going to give out of this group the Titans 4 losses and 3 wins. I think that's more than fair. And this puts the Titans at a win total of 7. The Vegas line is 5.5, and it's heavily juiced to the over. So Vegas is clearly trying to indicate that the Titans are going to land on 6. I could see them losing 2 more games than what we have here, but I agree with Vegas that they're probably going to land right on 6. My range is 5 to 8, though. There's no value at the 5.5 line, so the only value here would be betting over 6.5. And I'm not going to take 6.5 on a rookie quarterback with a team that just had 3 wins last year. And I don't see them as being going from like worst to first or even worst to second. They might get up to third, but I don't think that I'm going to be betting on this one. So let's go over the best bets that I do have for this division. I was able to catch the Texans over 9.5 wins at plus 100. If that's still available, I think it's a pretty good bet, just because we're getting the plus money. So obviously they might not hit this win total, but I think it's worth the risk for the plus money. And then I have 2 sprinkle bets for you. I bet on the exact 1-2 in this division. I did exact 1-2 Texans Jaguars plus 450, and then exact 1-2 Texans Colts plus 650. And then I probably want to go in there and sprinkle in a Jacksonville to win the division bet. That will probably be around plus 240 probably. I haven't looked at the odds in the last few days, but I would imagine it's probably around there, and I probably will want to sprinkle that one in. So obviously, if the Texans can't keep a hold of the division, in my opinion, it will be the Jaguars. But I do think the Titans have a good chance to keep a hold of this division here. All right, guys, so that's it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment. My picks are always free, so I appreciate the free little things you can do for me, like liking the video, leaving me a little comment. I love to talk football. It's my favorite sport, so I'm happy to interact with you on any of your thoughts. Please tell me if you think I'm totally wrong or if you agree with me on something. I'd love to talk about that with you. All right, thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next video when we cover our next and last video of this series, where we cover the AFC West.